Hello, and thanks for watching Focus, a program focused on community, unity, and service. I'm Chris Giard. The recent events across our country has brought much needed attention to existing issues of systemic racism and has also made us take a deep look into the social inequities in our communities. Education and understanding plays a vital role in navigating our way through these difficult times. Our next guest is here to talk about the importance of social justice and equity in education. I am honored to have with me Dr. Gerald M. Hairston, an education specialist with CREC, the Capital Region Education Council. Dr. Hairston, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start off just by talking about what kind of work you do.
Okay. So it can cover a range of things. I guess topically, I help schools think about how to diversify their staff and turn those intentions into actual products, into shifts in the diversity. And in keeping with that, I also help them think about and do work around the systems in their schools and how they can produce more, forgive the overuse of the term, more equitable outcomes, which can, I guess, essentially just mean that the right and entitlement to a quality and excellent education is intact for every student, and especially for students who are typically marginalized. And I guess maybe the third area that I work in really is more specific and discrete and around the use of data collection, which can include both narrative data and numeric data to try to help to explain what the circumstances of equity are in a particular school, and trying to use that to, again, affect change at the systemic, practice, and maybe even policy level.
Excellent. Can you give us some background info on why you do the work that you do and its intended impact on the people and communities that you work with?
Yeah, I think, part of it is sort of in this moment now, it's always surreal to think about and even answer this question, because I struggled as a learner in school, and I never really had a clear understanding as to why. I think socially it was difficult for me, and certainly academically as a consequence, I didn't have a good time. And so I think that became a sort of a focus of mine, trying to understand why schools just don't necessarily work for students with my experience and background. And that turned into an academic pursuit. And the more I studied, and the more at the wonderful Central Connecticut State University, the more I studied, and the more I really delved into the topic, the clearer my interest came from me, and it became more of a passion and something that I just can't stop looking away from. So I think the more I do the work and the closer I get to the relationships in schools and the systems in schools, I understand that it is fixable, but it takes a commitment and an effort, certainly driven by a passion. And so my why, I guess, is because I can't fathom doing anything else with the need being so great.
Okay. So obviously the pandemic has really changed a lot of how we operate, everybody forced to be remotely. In this difficult time, what are some of the challenges you have faced working remotely and just what's going on, with everything that's going on with our country right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. The work that I do is so intimate. It can seem academic at first blush, but it gets really personal really fast. And the more you touch on the idea of specifically race, and the more you disentangle that with people in a world, in a context, in a system like education that shied away from it, you start to touch upon beliefs that previously were stable. And the more you disrupt those ideas and the more you start to pull apart those systems, instability sets in. And when you're in person, you can be more therapeutic, and even medical, in your approach, the more you can sense people's dis-ease. But from a distance, it's harder to feel And I think it's harder to connect, and it makes that complication more of a burden on the person who's bringing that change into that environment and into that person's life. So it requires, an openness to, I guess, be responsible in that way, in a way that I hadn't necessarily had to before, is because I think I shared the responsibility for growth with the person because we were both feeling the same thing in the same place. But now I don't necessarily have the access to them in space like I would. And so I feel less capable of being able to help. So those challenges are really about the experience of learning. And the other part of it, I think, is just you need time. And I think what COVID-19 sort of, I don't know if it's an ancillary consequence, but I certainly haven't heard it unpacked a ton, is that it's compressed time. It's created urgency, I think, behind everything. So I think the time that people were dedicating to other things are now, it's compressed into trying to learn a new way of life. And something has to be put on the back burner. And I think so much of social justice and racial equity is about empathy and connecting with other people's experience, that it's hard to distract people, even temporarily, from what they're grappling with in order to think about how they are a party to someone else's safety and security. So it really is a heavy lift, but again, doable, but it is it's a shift from how it's been done previously.
Yeah, and I know that obviously the connections are a key, whether we're there in person or not. I know it's got to be extremely difficult for you. And I know for us here at Focus TV, one of our three pillars besides connections and community and service is unity. And I know that the one thing that I've been aware of is that I'm so optimistic of our younger generation, that the way that they're learning now and how they're being exposed. But how do you think that younger generation that are currently in school is going to help our country become less divided and more united?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I guess I'm cautiously optimistic, and maybe I should preface what I'm gonna say with that. There is hope, but I share your optimism, and I guess the reason I'm cautious about it is because, yes, kids carry a certain promise in their life. They're in many ways, they haven't had the opportunity to be complicated by the things that happen to you as you evolve into adulthood, so there's opportunity there. But I think in that opportunity, it becomes very easy to focus on students as the solution. And really, they are participants in a system that adults consciously create: a political system, an educational system, an economic system that benefits adults. And to get the adults to reconstruct an environment where you can take advantage of the opportunity to have kids explore new ways of living and new ways of socializing is a hard push. And I don't want to miss the students, but I want to be sure that we can, focus on those who have the responsibility for what the students' lives look like, because that's where the real opportunity for growth is.
So obviously, one thing we've been asking our guests is, now more than ever, what are you thankful for? And we've had this time to be at home with our loved ones, and we've seen what's gone on with the pandemic and the social inequities. It's given me some time to reflect. What are you thankful for?
Yeah, I like that question. In fact, it captures a moment that I had before we actually came on. My son is hanging out with my wife, and I got emotional thinking about the fact that I've seen so much, and I think as a person who studied, I can always go back and look at my life and have a real understanding of how hard life can be, and how difficult even the simplest things are to fix, not to mention something as complex as race or social justice. And I'm hopeful, though, that he won't have to do and walk in the path that hopefully I've laid effectively for him. With all the mistakes I've made, hopefully he won't have to do as much work. Yeah. And I sort of, I got emotional thinking about it. Like, I hope one day he looks at, some TV and says, there's my dad. I just want him to be proud, and I think I'm very thankful that I'm doing things that maybe one day he'll be proud of.
That resonates very strong with me too, as a father. So, Dr. Gerald M. Hairston, education specialist from CREC, is there any information you want to put out there, website or contact, if people have more questions or want to just learn more, and if you can get involved and help their school system possibly?
Yes, absolutely. Visit, the website at crec.org. And certainly look up, Hairston, Hairston. And, I have, several colleagues who, along with the agency, who are definitely pushing in the direction of social justice and equity. And so there's lots of help out there for schools and agencies who are looking to make the next step into, their contribution into those things, equity and social justice. And so I look forward to emails at ghairston@crec.org. And certainly, again, look on the website and see if there's any way that we can help. And I'm sure we would love to.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time today. Yeah. It was a pleasure talking with you, and be well.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. You as well.